Dallas gets a week of rest. They are currently 6-2, trailing the Philadelphia Eagles, the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East. The Cowboys have played extremely well, and that's considering they had to play a good chunk of the year with their backup quarterback under center. Quarterback controversy never really developed, but Cooper Rush was able to get them exactly what they needed to get, and that's to a 6-2 mark. It could have gone a lot of different ways. It could have went a lot worse than that. We've seen when the backup quarterback comes in for many a teams, it turns into a lost season very quickly. Dallas was able to keep that from being the case. Dak had his first good week against the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears aren't a team that we hold in high esteem, but it's important to get at least start somewhere. It's important to build some positive momentum, and heading into the bye week, couldn't think of a better time for Dak to do it. This offense, they were without Zeke in the last game. Tony Pollard, though, filled in and was excellent. 3 rushing touchdowns, some big time runs. That's going to be a storyline to monitor for the Cowboys. What do you think is the most important storyline for them as they move into this bye week?
That's a great question. I'm not exactly sure what the most important is. I think the Dak Prescott element is really interesting because he played great in that Chicago Bears game. Like, it was a great performance, completed close to 80% of his passes, 2 touchdowns, passer rating around 120. Like, that was a great game by Dak Prescott. Granted, Bears defense bad, but that's never stopped anyone from putting up bad performances this year when it feels like at the quarterback position. So, Dak had a great game. Again, Tony Pollard, you mentioned the 3 touchdowns. Their offensive line has been relatively healthy, which is something we haven't been able to say the past couple of years for the Cowboys. So I'm really interested to see what that offense is going to look like once it really comes together. Because as good as the defense has been at I think they've had someone who has a Cowboys defense on their fantasy team. I think they've had a pick 6 or a strip 6 in consecutive weeks now, which is obviously going to help your team a bit.
One of them, Justin Fields' fault entirely. Come on. All he needed to do was just finger tap Micah Parsons and prevents that from being the disaster play that turned into, and ultimately changing the course of that game. Because the Bears, so the Cowboys jumped to that overwhelming lead early on and then gave it all back to Chicago. So that is one thing that I think that would be something to monitor the Cowboys, because when we think about the Cowboys and we think about what they've been in recent history, we think about a team that has squandered a lot of opportunities, that has wasted talent, that has blown leads. And they almost did that against the Bears, even though they had a commanding talent advantage over the Chicago Bears. The Bears are starting to get a little scrappy. Justin Fields is starting to figure it out a little bit. So I'm not going to completely bury the Bears as like a non-factor whenever they play teams like the Cowboys. But you would like to see the Cowboys just put them away early and never allow them to get back into that game. I think the biggest storyline for me, and you mentioned it, is going to be Dak Prescott. Still coming off that hand injury. We look at a similar case with Russell Wilson last year when he had to come back from his hand injury. And obviously Russ has never really looked right this season, but he never looked right after that hand injury in particular. Will that continue to get better? And can we see more performances like we got from Dak heading into the bye, after the bye? And I want to see what they do with this running back combo. I want to see if they start giving Tony Pollard more run, because I think it's very clear that Tony Pollard is the guy that deserves more touches. He's the guy that really sets the stage for this offense to be something special, certainly more explosive. I'm not saying Zeke doesn't have any role in this offense. I think that Zeke, in particular in short yardage and the red zone, those are all places in which Zeke's talents, Zeke's skill set would be really helpful for the Cowboys in certain spot situations. But I think between the 20s, Tony Pollard needs to be your guy from the 20 to the 20, because he's the type of guy that could bring you from the 20 to the other 20 in just one play.
Yeah, it's weird to think about that switch from Pollard to Zeke, because we used to think of Zeke as that person who could help you move from 20 to 20, and that's why he got that big contract. I feel like we've done a lot of talk about the Cowboys offense, so I will move over to the defense a little bit, because if you remember last conversation around the Cowboys is that their defense was very turnover dependent. Obviously, there's a whole lot of Trayvon Diggs talk between him like giving up giant touchdowns, but also having a bunch of picks. This year, they've benefited a lot from turnovers. I think they have one of the best turnover margins in the NFL this season, and that's because they're forcing a lot of turnovers. But this year's less of a fluke, and the numbers bear it out that they are forcing a lot of turnovers and they also have a stable defense. Whereas last year it was like their defense is kind of unstable, but they are forcing a lot of turnovers. So it's masking a lot of their problems. Like the Cowboys do have a genuinely great defense this season. I'm not going to say it's an elite defense. It's very, very good. They're ranked third in DVOA currently, which is a byproduct of the last 2 weeks where they have given up 29 points, but they've also scored, I think, 21 points themselves as a defense the last couple weeks. So that's going to add a lot of value. And Dallas, obviously, Micah Parsons is amazing at football. Oh, he's so good at football. And they've revamped their linebacking core. They've gotten rid of Van Der Esch. They've gotten rid of Jalen Smith with some more no-name guys around Micah Parsons, and they've turned into a very solid unit. They copy and pasted some of those cornerbacks from both the Falcons and Cleveland, I believe, and they've been a very good defense so far this season. And because Micah Parsons is a do-it-all kind of guy, it makes it a little bit easier in the middle for Dallas. I think that's a team that you can count on their defense to. I mean, you don't want them to be on the field for long stretches of time, just like any defense, but especially this Cowboys defense. But I do think it's a defense that you can rely on. And that's something that I was not confident saying last year about the Cowboys team.
I think it is a good defense, and I'm not going to take much away from them, but I am going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. I don't think they've really played an elite offense to this point in the season. The Buccaneers, they played them week 1, held them to 19, but we've seen that the Buccaneers offense has been a shit show. The Bengals, they took a little bit of time to develop over the course of this year, and they only put up 17 against the Cowboys in week 2, so that's good. The Giants, limited offense. We know the Giants are a limited offense. You hold them to 18, that's fine. Commanders, 10 points. Carson Wentz still quarterback at the time. The Commanders, even with Taylor Heineke, a sputtering offense. Rams, you held them to 10 points. We talked about the Rams. We've talked about the Rams offense a lot this season. The Rams, not an offense that scares you in the 2022 season. The Eagles, you play them, they put up 26 on you, and the Eagles dominate that game. You had a backup quarterback, so you get a little bit of a pass. Lions, you hold them to 6 points. Lions, a little bit of a fluky, best offense in the league type thing. They were, in terms of scoring offense, among all the leaderboards. But, you know, if we're having an honest conversation about what the Lions are, I want to say Amon-Ra St. Brown was limited that week. Jared Goff is limited most weeks. The Lions aren't a good offense when you really boil it down just to the quarterback position. And then the Bears, the Bears put up 29 on you. In comeback mode, sure, but the Bears do put up 29 on you. So a little bit of a regression there. So I think we're going to get a little bit more answers in 3 weeks. Okay, so they come back off the bye and they face the Packers. And the Packers, again, I feel like the Packers, we hold them in the same category as the Rams and Bucks this year. This Packers offense is not explosive. I mean, you don't see the explosive plays in that Packers offense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going to really learn much from them playing the Cowboys. In a couple of weeks, they play the Vikings, though. And the Vikings, obviously, by that point, could still only have 1 loss on their record. And if that's the case, then that will tell us a lot about the current playoff picture in the NFC. But beyond that, I mean, they play the Giants again. The Colts, we know their offense isn't much. They play the Texans, Jaguars, the Eagles again, the Titans by week 17, and then the Commanders. Their defense, again, I like the players. I think they have a good defense. Dan Quinn, what he's been able to do with this defensive unit, I think has been special. And Mike McCarthy being able to add Dan Quinn to the staff was a much needed acquisition for the Cowboys roster and what they're doing as a team. The problem is I just don't think going into the playoffs, we're really going to know how good they truly are. If they really are a historic defense or...
No, they're not that. I can tell you they're not
defense
that.
for Dallas. Like if we're adding them to like the Dallas Cowboys franchise, like where do they fall between that? The stats might look good at the end of the year, but the stats might also indicate that they only played 2 offenses that scare you and they allowed 29 points to the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, I guess lucky them that there aren't a lot of great offenses in the NFC. So, odds are they might not get to play one of those in the playoffs. But I think second round, they're probably going to face the Eagles, and that's going to be really tough because I don't think of the Cowboys as a defense that's like poised to stop the Eagles, or say in the grand macro scheme of things, they make a weird Super Bowl run, like playing Kansas City or Buffalo. They're going to give up 40 points to either of those teams because those teams can score 40 points on great defenses.
And
Scoring 40 points on
it could come down to something as simple. You talk about like the ball hawk that is Trayvon Diggs, right? Trayvon Diggs, who also allows yards of separation you can't allow whenever, let's say they played Buffalo. Let's say we had some Diggs on Diggs violence in the Super Bowl, right? Stephon Diggs could absolutely get some separation. He has the quarterback to get some extra separation. That would be a problem. Or Patrick Mahomes, who, if he sees even an inch of separation, can zip the ball right in space. I don't know how this defense would do against those types of offenses. And in the NFC, you mentioned like what would be the matchups that would really fair. The Vikings, again, I like the offensive skill pieces on the Vikings. Let's face it, you have Dalvin Cook. They just added TJ Hawkinson at the deadline, Justin Jefferson. The Vikings have some offensive playmakers. It's all going to come down to the quarterback, who Kirk Cousins, sometimes in big games he shows up, sometimes in big games he doesn't. And if he doesn't show up against the Cowboys in that defense, they get a little bit of pass rush. They can very easily knock Kirk Cousins off his game. The Niners, we saw that game last year, right? Jimmy Garoppolo can get the ball off his hands quick, which will neutralize the pass rush a little bit, but there might be the oh no Jimmy throw, which it's going to happen. It just play enough games. There's going to be an oh no Jimmy throw a couple times. But now the Niners offense, we talked about the offensive skill pieces on that team, Debo, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, and Kittle. How do they match up against this Cowboys defense? That might be the best offense aside from Philadelphia that the Cowboys will face in the NFC. I guess it's just an unknown variable. The other variable for them, again, we go back to shifting the pendulum a little bit, not for too long, but shifting the pendulum a little bit. Will the offense get back to where it was, right? Will we see more Pollard worked in? Will we see Dak get himself back up to the higher end of the tier 3 quarterbacks, right? And CeeDee Lamb kind of reemerges an elite wide receiving weapon. You know, these are the type of things. Michael Gallup, as he continues to recover from that ACL, will he add something to this offense? Can their offense balance out their defense, even if their defense regresses a little bit towards the tail end of the season, or isn't as elite as perceived on paper?
Yeah, I think those are fair conversations. I will say, in fairness to Trayvon Diggs, he is first in the league in pass deflections this year. So
could be a product of people targeting him, right?
No, it is. It is a product of people targeting him, but I didn't think the interception numbers were gaudy this year. He does have 3 interceptions, so I thought he only had 1 on the season, but he does have 3 interceptions, but he is deflecting passes instead of intercepting them this year.
I think, though, fine. What some of the more elite corners over the years would tell you, like a prime Deion Sanders or Richard Sherman, that your interception numbers typically go down because people start being more scared of you. When your interception numbers are so high, Diggs, that's kind of telling that they're still willing to target you.
Yeah, but this is Trayvon Diggs. We know he's not an elite corner. We have tons of evidence that shows us he's not an elite corner.
Just more thing to prove from an anecdotal point of view when you talk about some of the other cornerbacks throughout NFL history and why they don't necessarily have the all-time interception stats or the pass deflection stats. It's because people typically just avoid throwing at their general side of the field.
Exactly. And for the Cowboys, it's incredible that you're talking about those offenses in the NFC and somehow Tom Brady didn't get mentioned. That just warmed my heart.
We know what it is.
Yeah, I know,
unless
right?
Something amazing happens in this back half of the season, and it might, again, we talked about the Bucs offense in another video. Can they get it together? Unless something amazing happens, I think the Buccaneers offense is seemingly kind of peaked.
But what happened, y'all? Did you all stop believing in the Tom Brady magic? Did you stop believing in Tom Brady's magical gifts?
I lost faith in this offensive line, which is not good at all.
y'all who were talking about Brady winning MVP last year, and now that he looks like Kirk Cousins, y'all are kind of losing hope.
But he got robbed.
No, he didn't, but that's okay. But I just bring that up because, the most probable situation is the Cowboys are the 5 seed in the NFC. Who's going to be the 4 seed in the NFC? Probably Tampa, I would guess. I mean, Tampa or whoever wins the bullshit NFC South title. That's kind of what they're staring down at this point, if that's where the Cowboys are going.
Has never lost a game to the Dallas Cowboys in his career.
Well, I mean, Dallas and Tampa would be a fun playoff matchup. And if they survive that, it almost guarantees them a game against the Eagles. I mean, it would be fun. It would be fun. I think the Cowboys are headed for a collision course with Philadelphia at some point. That seems like the inevitable outcome, whether it's in the second round or I guess maybe they would. Maybe the second round is what they're shooting for there. But it seems like Dallas, their big questions are going to be what happens once they play a team like Philadelphia or Minnesota. And the thing I'll give them praise for is they're really good on offense. I mean, they're really good at moving the ball on offense. They score a lot of points on offense. I don't know if that's a byproduct of the offense that they run or the teams they're playing or whatever it is, but they score a lot of points on offense and they have a good pass rush, and good pass rush will be good against poor offensive line, which is not what the Eagles have. The Eagles have a great offensive line. So I guess we'll see what happens once they match up with the Eagles.
All righty, guys. Well, let us know what you think about the Dallas Cowboys as they head on into the bye. What do you think is next for the Dallas Cowboys? Do you think they can still potentially sneak up on the Eagles in division? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias, which you can find in our YouTube bio. And stay safe, happy, and healthy. From Ju-Ju and Kyle Ledbetter, we will see you next time.